Welcome into another edition of Big Talk, college sports with a Midwest perspective, blue collar and blue blood. You could see Sam Springer bouncing over there if you're joining us on the visual media, because this isn't just your average edition of Big Talk. It's the March Madness edition of Big Talk.
It's here.
This is the best time of the year. I don't even know, Sam, I think baseball is your favorite sport, right? But March Madness is your favorite sports time?
Correct. And
Yeah.
you know the crazy thing, the nice thing is historically it's always been the big dance, NCAA, and then the finals was normally on opening day of baseball, so it just kind of pushed me right into baseball season. It's changed a little bit since, but yes, you're absolutely correct. Baseball overall is my favorite sport. The NCAA tournament is my absolute favorite time of year.
And what we're getting ready to experience with the first and second round is always the most fun, which, by the way, if you're listening to this, we recorded this earlier on Thursday morning. So we recorded this before any of the games started. So
Correct.
If you're experiencing this on Friday or later, this was done a little bit more in advance.
You'll be able to see how dumb we are.
Yeah, right.
At least for the first day.
So let's matter of fact start diving into it, because
Yes.
for the men's side we have 6 Big Ten teams that are making it into the Big Dance. On the women's side, we have a Big Ten record tying 7 teams making it into the Big Dance. They had 7 last year too, so kind of carrying on the momentum that we've been seeing here recently with Big Ten women's basketball. But let's start off on the men's side. We mentioned there's 6 teams, and I think maybe the most appropriate way to start with is maybe the squad that I have an interest with, because it kicks off the entire tournament.
The entire thing.
For the round of 64 on Thursday morning, or I suppose early afternoon, 12:15 in the afternoon, Michigan State will take on Mississippi State in Charlotte, North Carolina.
MSU's going to win.
I was going to say the battle for MSU superiority. Also the battle for Rocket Watts' former teams.
Yes.
As a college player. So a lot on the line besides just moving on to potentially face North Carolina. They're playing Wagner, who won their play-in game. But, I mean, as you know, a 16 has beaten a 1. Sorry, Sam.
Twice.
But it's pretty rare. So more than likely you'll be playing North Carolina. But let's start with the Michigan State-Mississippi State game. What stands out to you here, Sam?
Michigan State's got to get their act together. They've kind of been a bipolar roller coaster all year long and not been lived up to what we expected from them. So what stands out to me is, does Michigan State, honestly, it's March. It's a Tom Izzo-led team, so you never say it's impossible to have them make a run. But you need to see that turnaround happen really quick or you go home. And, I asked Tom Izzo last year in Columbus about that, about how his teams are able to, in March, to seem like they just flip a switch. And he said that it's a lot of it's the prep, the leading into March. Now we're here. Let's see if his team can flip that switch. That's what I'm going to look for is, are they going to turn into what we expected them?
Well, and what I find interesting about this, because I thought the good news for MSU was we saw a pretty good week last week in the Big Ten tournament. I thought they had a good win against Minnesota where they shot highly efficient.
Correct.
They battled Purdue, and again, the heart and effort they played with in that quarterfinal game against Purdue, if they play with that type of inspiration, Michigan State is capable of more than what they've done throughout the year. And then also a big part of it too, because honestly, that Purdue game, they didn't shoot terribly well, but you know what else they did do? They got out on the break. And I've been saying this entire time, if Michigan State gets into the half court, they're in trouble. But when they get out and run, I think they had 18 fast break points against Purdue, and Purdue had 0. Like, that's how Michigan State tilts games, and they're going to need to run on Mississippi State. The guards, we know that 3-headed monster of Tyson Walker, A.J. Hogard, Jaden Akins. They've got to be really good. I mean, that's just it. They've got to show up, and they've got to be able to hit shots. There's been so much inconsistency with those squad, but if those 3 show up and hit shots, you get a good Malik call. Michigan State really should probably beat Mississippi State if that's the case, because for Mississippi State, too, I think a lot of Big Ten fans that have been paying attention all season long will really see deja vu with this game because the way Mississippi State plays is like a lumbering physical style. They want to make it a dogfight as well. So this should be a Big Ten game in March Madness, basically.
Well, and let's, for those that haven't followed Mississippi State, they beat Tennessee pretty handily in the SEC tournament. So they didn't just accidentally get an 8 seed, and while the committee does miss the mark on some things, they even at an 8 seed, they're appropriately placed. I think they're a team that could do some damage to some teams, and Mississippi State's not a bad team. So Michigan State's going to have to bring their game.
Absolutely. And I think ultimately that's what it comes down to is, and that's kind of been the case all season long, you don't really know what Michigan State is going to show up. There's been so much inconsistencies. And if you get a good Spartan squad that's making some of those tough end of shot clock shots, Michigan State's probably going to win. And we're going to be seeing some of the Tom Izzo magic a little bit, and then see what happens with North Carolina. But let's go ahead and move forward to Illinois and Morehead State. This is a Thursday game as well at 3:10 in the afternoon. The Illini fresh off of a Big Ten tournament championship where they beat Wisconsin in what was a great game. But Illinois, I thought throughout that entire week there in Minneapolis was super impressive.
Yeah, well, and they're playing like they had most of the season, and this is a completely different Illinois team than the one that entered the NCAA tournament last year. If you remember last year, Brad Underwood was saying we just haven't gelled yet. Well, this team is gelled. They did it in Minneapolis. They done it leading into it Minneapolis, but they gelled and came together and won the tournament. I think they could make a run. I've actually got them going to the Elite Eight in my bracket. So I think they could, and this is a completely different Illinois team. Could they get beat by Morehead State? Sure, anything can happen. I mean, but I don't foresee this happening. Illinois has just got too many weapons to not make it to the second weekend. I would be shocked if they don't make it to the second weekend.
Well, and that's watching this Illinois team, look, that offense is explosive, incendiary with this Illini squad. I mean, they are as good offensively as it gets.
Right.
The semifinal game against Nebraska, Terrence Shannon Jr. dropped in 40 points of his own. And, of course, they scored in the 90s in the championship game against Wisconsin. There is no question that Illinois' offense is going to be superior to just about anybody they're on the floor with, and that can carry you some ways. But the question is, for a Final Four run potentially or beyond, will this Illini squad be able to show up and get stops at the times where they need it? Because the offense will carry them a pretty good ways, but can the defense supply and make those momentous, those timely stops to help the squad? Because here, Sam, this Illinois program, think about this. They have yet to, you mentioned they probably should be able to get to the second weekend. I don't disagree with you. They haven't done that since 2005. It's been 19
blows my
years.
mind.
I mean, the last squad was Darren Williams in them that went to the championship game and lost to North Carolina. It hasn't been done a Sweet 16 appearance for the Illini since, but I'm with you. I think this year should be the year. I think,
and BYU could catch them off guard because BYU can shoot the ball. They're one of those programs that just always is able to shoot from distance. So if they get hot, sure, the 6 seed could beat them. I think what I'm looking at in their part of the region, in that Omaha part, Iowa State is the team that they're going to need to watch out for. And granted, they're the 2 seed, so obviously they're going to, but they're just really, to me, there's not a team that stands out until Iowa State that should be considered a huge threat to Illinois.
Yeah, and again for the Illini too, just to show a little bit how explosive they've been. I pulled up a couple of numbers. They're 8th in the country in points per game. They're scoring 84.4 points per contest.
Good Lord.
Free throws per game, they right now are averaging 23 and a half free throws a game. That's 17th best in the country. And Like, obviously, Purdue's going to be first in that category. Illinois does it by just driving to the basket. Like, that's how good they are downhill.
Right.
I mean, it's a really, really tall task for a lot of these teams to be able to guard at Illinois. But that's all the men's games for Thursday for the Big Ten is Michigan
Now,
State.
of all the games, do you have any huge upset alert for those Thursday games, for today's games?
For the Big Ten, I'm gonna go.
I'm just saying in general of
general.
Yeah.
Do you? Because I'm gonna need to take a quick glance.
Yes,
over.
I have two, but there's one, and the news about McCullough not being able to be played in the tournament, that leads me to maybe a second one in Samford, but I have McNeese State going to the Sweet 16.
Oh, okay.
Or McNeese. They used to be McNeese State. Sorry, they're McNeese now. I have them beating Gonzaga, and then I have them beating Kansas. But that may be them beating Samford, depending on how that works out.
But you know what? Fair enough. I mean, this is a Gonzaga team that I thought. By the way, I mean, we haven't talked about this. I was so dizzied by the results from the NCAA selection committee.
Oh, Dalton went bye-bye for a minute, so I don't know what his dizziness is. Let's pull him back in. You jumped out on me there, pal. What are you caught off guard by? You were in the middle of something there.
It wasn't so much about who was in, who was out, maybe the teams that were last left out, but the seeding. I thought Gonzaga was maybe a 7 seed. Honestly, with Michigan State, I thought Michigan State was going to be a first 4 team based on all the bid thieves that happened. And Michigan State was way higher than I thought. Florida Atlantic was way higher than I thought.
Tell me, when you saw the seeding come out and there was a play-in game or a first 4 game that was a 10 seed, I thought Michigan State was included in it. I thought for sure Michigan State was in Dayton.
I did too. And then once they showed both of those at-large play-in matchups and Michigan State wasn't there yet, I sat there and, look, I was over in the building over at Michigan State, and I was surrounded with the media members, and it was getting tight. People were just kind of.
Was there worry was it worry that maybe the Spartans hadn't made it then, or was it, oh, okay, we're higher than the 10 seed?
I mean, it depends probably on who you ask. I know certainly I felt, because of all those bid thieves I talked about. I think
there were 5, weren't there?
I think Tom Izzo had talked about the stat of there were 20. So there's 32 conference tournaments. 21 seeds lost. And with like those mid-majors, that makes a big deal.
Sure does.
A typical year is like 8 to 12. 8 to 12 one seeds lose. 20 lost this year. And it just kind of made everything go crazy, where I'm sitting there late at that night on Saturday night, and you see Oregon defeat Colorado, and you see NC State beat North Carolina, and all of a sudden you're kind of like, okay, well, that's a couple more spots. Like, I think there was a lot of anxiety, because I thought before all the bid thieves, you were like, you know what, based on the metrics, the consensus of bracketologists, feel pretty good here. And then all that happened, and you're like, oh.
I saw somebody actually make an argument that Ohio State had a better resume than Michigan State did for their bid.
I've been seeing a lot of those arguments. A lot of people are loving to use MSU as maybe the poster boy for net rankings. And go ahead.
How much of a travesty is it that Indiana State didn't make it, since they were a net 29 in the net rankings?
I got to tell you, so by the way, I think one of the best writers there is in college basketball is Brendan Quinn of The Athletic. I think he is just as good as it gets. He delivered a hilarious line on Selection Sunday night that, after witnessing the first play-in game with Virginia, still rings true, where he tweeted, "I would rather watch Indiana State players park cars than Virginia play basketball in the stands."
Well, I saw one this morning, or yesterday morning, after Virginia got beat, and they showed the halftime score. It was 27-14, and it said Avila would have scored 15 on his own. Shame on the committee.
They're not wrong. It just, I was really upset with that, because that was the poster child for a poster guy for who we fall in love with March Madness.
Well, the net rankings, Virginia's at like 57, and they get an at-large bid, but yet Indiana State is 29 in the net rankings, and they don't even get a play-in game or a first 4 game.
Yeah.
Come
So
on. I think
I'm
Colorado and Indiana State would have been a heck of a lot more entertaining than what we saw Tuesday night with Virginia.
And so to go back to your first question, I don't know that I have an upset necessarily, but I got a game to watch. You
Okay.
want a game to watch if you are just wanting to snort a bunch of points all in a 2-hour frame. At 7:10, it's going to be 3 seed Kentucky and 14 seed Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
Oakland out of the Horizon League. And look, folks, Greg Campy and them boys throw up threes. This is going to be a fun squad. Kentucky, much to our conversation with Illinois earlier, such a high scoring offense. Like this game could be played as first to get to 100.
You weren't alive when the whole Hank Gathers and Loyola Marymount thing happened.
Correct.
But they played a defending champion Michigan in the second round. And it was the highest scoring game ever in regulation. It was like 130 to 110. And it was ridiculous. And honestly, I don't think it's going to be 130 to 110, but it's going to be very comparable where people are just chucking them from the cheap seats.
Yeah, unless like it's just a really off shooting day, like that game has all the billings of being just like lighting up the scoreboard and testing its capacity.
Yep.
Like
Tomorrow morning we'll wake up 46-43.
You're right. that's why I say, it has all the potential because you never really know what's going to happen. But that should be a fun game to watch.
And you know what? The reason why McNeese has played so well against Power 5 schools and played very well in their season. They've got a really good coach. Whatever your thoughts on him are when he was at LSU, I can't remember his name. Will
Wade.
Thank you. Will Wade. He knows his stuff when it comes to basketball, So I think, and it's a 5-12 game, so that sets up perfectly. There was a couple years back, or more than a couple now, that 3 of the 4 5-12 games were won by 12 seeds. So you can almost pencil in at least one 5-12, and this is actually I have Gonzaga and St. Mary's both losing.
There's so many 5-12 games that you look at this year. Like
Wisconsin could.
That's one that we'll need to get to because that one, I mean, when it popped up, my eyes just got as big as saucers. But so let's go ahead and move to Friday.
Yeah.
We're starting on Friday. The Big Ten will be a part of the first game again, 12:15 in the afternoon. Northwestern against Florida Atlantic. FAU, of course, made it to the Final Four last year.
How about 3 of the 4 Final Four teams in the same pod? Or like the same half of the bracket, not the same pod, same half of the bracket.
Yeah, I had to fight through each other to get back. But FAU had a pretty good year this year. They tested themselves a lot in the non-conference. If I remember right, their record was like 25-7. Again, but really 25 and what?
8.
Okay. And then they lost in their conference tournament. They got an at-large bid. A lot of people didn't have them as maybe high as an 8. They thought they were closer to the bubble than where they ended up. But they get Northwestern, and for the Wildcats, they're in back-to-back big dances for the first time in school history.
Witnessing history, kids.
Chris Collins is making this a regular habit there in Evanston, Illinois.
Pretty soon they're going to expect it every year, Dalton. I don't know.
It happens so fast where you get so spoiled. But so Northwestern plays Florida Atlantic. Boo Booey and March Madness give me all of that. I'm super excited.
I'll drink it like it's just syrup. Like it just is going to be amazingly good.
This should be a really fun game, though. And, of course, Florida Atlantic returned a lot of the nucleus from that squad that made that Final Four run last year. So I think this is going to be a great way to start off on Friday.
Oh, I agree. It's going to be honestly, this could be a pretty decently high-scoring game, too. It's not going to be the Kentucky Oakland potential, but both teams can put points on the board. Now, Northwestern can also go into a big drought too.
Yeah,
I haven't seen enough of Florida Atlantic to know their habits, except for I know they can put points on the board. But Northwestern has shown the tendency to where if it's just Boo hitting shots, it could get very points come as a premium.
Well, and I think, though, that's going to be part of the recipe just because Northwestern, again, folks, is pretty banged up. I mean, Ty Berry's done for the year. Like, there aren't as many offensive weapons for the Wildcats
Right.
anymore. It's Boo Booey's show to run and see how he sprinkles the teammates in. But it's give the keys to Boo Booey and let him go. Like I really think that's where you're at
Right.
for Northwestern. Other Big Ten matchups on Friday at 6:50 at night. Nebraska as the 8 seed will square off with Texas A&M, the 9 seed. Nebraska back in the dance for the first time in 10 years. The last time was 2014. And again, folks, just as a reminder before this game starts, Nebraska is the only Big Ten school that does not have a NCAA tournament
How
win.
tired are they of that? Hearing that?
They have to be. Well, and they can put it to bed here with this game against Texas A&M.
Yep.
And given how well Nebraska's played, I think it's pretty possible.
Yeah, I obviously 8-9 games, even if a 9 seed wins, I never consider that an upset.
Agreed.
It's only an upset according to seeding, but because they try to put the most.
Where do the upsets start? Is it 11-6? Is that where you start?
Yeah, because 7-10 is arbitrary at best too.
Too.
You know, I mean, if there's more than 3 between the seeds, I think that's when it starts becoming an upset. That's to me, but yeah, Nebraska can, this would be one heck of a 1990s Big 12 matchup. I can tell you right there. But I think Nebraska, with the way they played in the tournament, I mean, they had Illinois down. It took Terrence Shannon Jr. blowing up and come playing out of his mind. And they came back and they went on a little bit of a drought to get beat by Illinois, but they didn't play horribly. So I think they could honestly. I'm not going to say they're going to beat Houston, but I think they could. I think they get off the schneid and beat A&M. But hey, who am I?
But I'm with it too, and they have everything. Look, I think a lot too with the NCAA tournament. A lot of it is backcourt play. You've got to have experienced backcourt play that can hit shots. And Keisei Tominaga is that. I mean,
he's got to be one of the best in the country when it comes to just clutchness, right?
Yeah. I mean, and he's able just to hit these big shots. Like, look, they're an 8 seed, so I mean, if they win, they got a 1. You never really know what's going to happen, but you could almost envision a Steph Curry-like run from Keisei Tominaga. Like that's a very doable
There's
thing.
a reason why he wears number 30.
That's a good point. Let's move over to Purdue. Purdue ends up being the number 1 overall, or number
3rd
3
overall seed.
Overall, thank you. Jeez. I'm telling you, as in the words of John Rothstein, we sleep in May. There has not been
That's
a
right.
lot of it over here on this side. But so Purdue, a 1 seed again. Of course, Sam, if you're new to the podcast audience, Sam is a big Purdue fan. He's wearing the Purdue cap right now. He went through the trauma that was last year where you hear at the end, FDU believe it, as Fairleigh Dickinson won.
I was blessed to be able to cover my first tournament. And what do I witness in Columbus is the 2nd largest upset in NCAA tournament
Welcome
history.
to March.
And honestly, it was not embarrassing. It was humbling is what it was to me. Those guys were shocked, but yet they were humbled at the same time. I don't think they were a bit embarrassed because they owned it. Mm-hmm. But I think this year's going to be a different story. I don't think there's a way that they get beaten this first round. Honestly, say what you want. They're going to go down. The people that absolutely hate Purdue are going to say, well, they're going to lose the second year. No, they're not. If they do, then you know what? Purdue might as well pack it up and not play ever again. And of course, now that I say that, they're no. But my point being is they took that loss and they've built their season to making sure they make a run this year. And I've never been as sure about something, and I'm not a betting person because I don't bet unless I know it's a sure thing. I would be willing to bet money almost like that they're going to make it to the second weekend because they want to prove that we're not just
second weekend even.
Yeah. Yes. So I won't tell you where I've got them going in my bracket, Dalton,
National
because
championship.
yes, yes. I've definitely I definitely that's when my fandom comes into play though. I seriously went by just comparing who I have them playing and got them to the final four before I started making uh personal like fan choice, you know. And even then I feel pretty comfortable with at least getting them to the final game with the way my bracket was played out. So but I just Purdue is it's different. We've talked about it, I've written about it. It's different this year. There's something that's different about this year compared to what it was last year.
So what's interesting when you talk about Purdue's potential, that region, the 8-9, if they get to that, which we assume they will, as Utah State, TCU, the 2 seed Tennessee, 3 seed Creighton, 4 seed Kansas, and as we talked about earlier, Kansas dealing with injury issues without their leading scorer McCullough.
And how good is Dickinson because he separated his shoulder?
Yeah, like that's a really favorable region.
You were trying to get another word for easy, weren't you?
Yeah, like I was like, because easy is not the right word. It's hard
no,
to
never.
harsh.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
But like as far as it goes, that's about as good as you could maybe ask for. The only thing that has me tripped up a little bit, I felt the Purdue team in Minneapolis, and you could question maybe the motives of playing in the Big Ten tournament and how much it even means to a team. And maybe that's part of it. But I did not believe that was their best basketball. And that always, just before you get going into this final ride, that always makes me a little bit more nervous about a team.
Can I ask you, did that feeling come before or after Braden Smith went down hurt?
Before.
Okay. So that's why I was asking, because as soon as he went down, I was like, shut him down and do not let him play again.
I was surprised he came onto the floor.
I think he wanted to put people's mind at ease, and he probably wanted to maybe try it out to make sure that there was nothing really there.
Yeah.
But still, I was shocked he came back to the game. But it also, as a fan, relieved me too, because I texted you as soon as that happened and said, this might be huge.
Yeah, no, I thought so too. I mean, without Braden Smith, that the run of you're talking about potential for Purdue, it changes pretty dramatically.
It would have changed my brackets completely if he'd have blown his knee out.
And that's how so many teams are with some of their star players.
Sure.
I mean, that's no real difference. But yeah, I just didn't think they were playing at the ceiling that they're capable of. And again,
is it motivation?
It could be.
It's the Big Ten tournament. Let's go out. Let's have fun. If we get beat, we get beat. Whatever.
That's why I don't want to make it more than what it is, and that's why, because that could be the variable. But it does concern me. Like I'm interested to see what happens in that game. Not so much.
Is it concerning or intriguing?
I think both.
Okay.
I think it is concerning.
Okay.
If you're a Purdue fan, just because I think they're better than what they played in that tournament, in both the Michigan State game and the Wisconsin game. And I that part concerns me, because there's just so little room for error for even the better teams when you get into March Madness. Now, granted, in a 116 game, there's probably some room for error, but you get what I'm saying.
Sure.
If I was a Purdue fan, and again, I don't want to make it bigger than it is, because maybe you're right. Maybe it was just the Big Ten tournament. Who really cares? Let's get ready for the NCAA tournament, because that's where
because when they stepped into Minneapolis, they were, excuse me, already pretty solidly a number 1 seed. It was just a matter of whether they were the number 1 overall seed or the 4 overall seed. We kind of already knew that was happening.
Yep.
They didn't need that tournament to do anything other than just secure where they would be on the 1 line.
Yep. So and very much that could be a variable. So that's why I don't want to make this like sound the alarms in West Lafayette. But
by the way, just for everybody, I have Purdue and Creighton in the Elite Eight.
I don't hate that.
Yeah, I think Creighton's really an underestimated number 3 seed.
I don't disagree at all. I'm with you on that, partner. I'm absolutely with you. But okay, so we've talked a little bit about Purdue. Let's get to the other game. And this one might be the most, out of all the Big Ten matchups in the first round, this one might be the one I'm most excited for. It's one that you're going to need a few cups of coffee before because it tips at 9:40 at 9
Yeah.
o'clock Friday night.
Yeah.
But a 5-12 matchup of Wisconsin, the 5 seed, where Wisconsin, look, beginning of the year, we're playing at a really high level. Boy, did it nosedive in the middle. And now here at the very end in that Big Ten tournament run, they are playing some of their best basketball again. Was really impressed with Wisconsin. They faced James Madison, the champs of the Sun Belt Conference, went 31-3. Look, Big Ten already has seen James Madison this year. They won, if you remember, in overtime on opening night at the Breslin Center in East Lansing, upsetting Michigan State at the time, who was number 4 in the country. And that's before I think James Madison even got confident in who they were going to be. This game is, I think, as intriguing as a Big Ten one gets to start.
I don't disagree. This, excuse me, I have Wisconsin winning it, but it wasn't like, yep, easily Wisconsin. You know, it was, oh, golly, because you knew what James Madison's already. You don't go 31-3. It doesn't matter what conference, what level you play at. 31-3 is one hell of a good record, and they're a good team. Nobody wanted James Madison opposing them. But I still think that Wisconsin playing the way they are, I think they win. But Wisconsin has also shown that they can get beat by Michigan, you know? So like this was a tough one for me to even consider. But James Madison, if somebody were to say James Madison makes it to the second weekend, I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And I think too, much to the conversation we were kind of just having there, look, if Wisconsin, the same Wisconsin team that just played Purdue, played Illinois to the wire, if that Wisconsin team shows up, I'm taking Wisconsin. Like, and that's not out of the realm to believe that they're just going to continue the momentum they had in Minneapolis. Like, they played that level in the last game. I thought what Hepburn did at the end of that Purdue game to force overtime is starting to get maybe a bit more aggressive. I think Chucky Hepburn driving the ball and creating offense changes things for Wisconsin dynamically. I thought Klesmet had the clutch floater at the end of that Purdue game. I just think they're resembling a lot of the DNA aspects that go into winners. But I also think James Madison resembles some of that too.
For sure.
That's why I think this one really has me faltering a bit. But this should be a great, great game.
The way I did my bracket, I assumed that Wisconsin was going to carry it on the way they played in Minneapolis. If they play the way they are or have been in Minneapolis and did at the beginning of the season, I think they could push Houston in the Sweet 16, honestly. They're that good. Well, you know, and I keep falling back to it. Wisconsin was number 6 in the country when they played Purdue the first time.
Yep.
They didn't get there by accident. They just hit a really rough patch that allowed them to lose what was 8 of 11 that put them in the position that they're in now. They recovered and started playing well to where they made it to the finals of the Big Ten tournament. I think that's the true Wisconsin team that is there. They hit a bad spot and went into a big slump, and it earned them the 5 seed. Now it earned them a game against a very tough 12 seed, but I still think they can. I still think they can power through that, and I have them losing to Houston in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. And Houston's played so well this year too, so no shame in there. Real quick, before we move to women's basketball, I want to throw this in, and if you have anything else on the men's side before we segue over. Ohio State head coach now, Jake Diebler, was promoted, and the interim tag was removed in the final 8 games of the year, won 6 of them, only lost 2, really had a good showing there in the Big Ten tournament. In the NIT, they defeated Cornell in the first round. I'm looking to see when they play again, March 23rd and March 24th. They'll play. I didn't see who won between between Virginia Tech or Richmond. I'll look that up in a minute. But they're still in postseason ball as of now. I thought this was a really cool move because I don't know, Sam. Maybe it's just seeing how the world works and not. I had a belief growing up that everything was kind of based on merit. You work hard, you do good, and you kind of get promoted and things work themselves
Yeah.
out. And then you kind of enter the world and you see that's not always how everything goes. And for Jake Diebler, that happened for him. And I thought for me, that kind of restored a little bit of faith just in the goodness of hard work, the goodness and belief, and so on.
Yeah, you know what? He completely earned this position. Even if, in 2 years, the new AD decides, you know what, this isn't working out because they flounder where they're at, where they did with Holtman the last 2 years. That happens, but yeah, you're exactly right. Look what that core of players did when they made him the interim, and then it earned him the head coach position. And if at the very least, it's a really good feel good story.
Absolutely.
Of you put your time in, you work your way up, and you get that payoff. And I hope. I'm not an Ohio State fan. I'm far from it. But you know what? I hope he does well enough to do some things that are special, just not against Purdue anymore.
I understand that. And of course, his first win as the interim coach.
Yep, right. That's what I'm saying is please, let's not do that anymore.
But they'll be playing Virginia Tech in the second round of the NIT. But I thought that was some pretty good news as well. So let's go ahead and move over to the women's side real quick before we end up getting out of here. Taking a look at a couple of the matchups there. Iowa, the number 1 seed, will be playing at 3:00 on Saturday against the 16. A tough region for Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, you ain't joking.
Pretty interested to see how this one goes because, of course, this is – look, if you have been just gobbling up all the Caitlin Clark showcase, all the different things that there is, you're going to get a lot more of that. I mean, it's been reported that Holly Rowe is going to be a designated reporter for Caitlin Clark, where she's just following Clark around and reporting. So, look, if you're
not a fan of Caitlin Clark, don't watch the tournament.
It's going to stranglehold the coverage, but again, it's worked out pretty well for ratings and whatnot. So that should be interesting to see how they navigate.
I'm looking at this region they're in. My good Lord.
Yeah.
They've got LSU, which is a rematch from the finals last year if they make it.
Yep.
UCLA's in there. Creighton is the 7 seed. Goodness. Louisville, Kansas State, Colorado. Goodness.
Yeah.
They didn't give them and do them any favors, did they?
Not at all. So that's a tough region for Iowa. Moving over, Michigan gets a 9 seed. They're going to be out in LA in the Southern California hosting site. But 9 seed Michigan will take on 8 seed Kansas. That is on Saturday at 2:00. So Michigan makes it back in what is kind of a down year for the Wolverines overall. But Layla Filia and the Wolverines able to get back in. I thought 9 was a very generous seed.
I thought so too.
They were right on the bubble, and what catapulted them in, I suppose you could say, is that they beat Indiana in the Big Ten tournament, but Mackenzie Holmes wasn't playing in that game. And I don't know, I guess that win was worth jumping 10 teams or whatever.
Maybe the committee didn't see that Mackenzie Holmes didn't play.
Well, it raises those kinds of questions because it
makes you wonder what they were watching, huh?
But like I said, on the men's side, I was pretty dizzied by some of the results that came out in the seeding, and the women pretty similarly. I was surprised by a couple. So Michigan will be playing on Saturday. Friday at noon, Ohio State will take on Maine. That's a 2:15 game, 2 seed versus 15.
Now, you remember the Maine Bears played IU, and I think they played them really well, didn't they?
They did. IU went out there because Mackenzie Holmes is from Maine.
Right.
And Indiana was struggling earlier in the year. So I didn't actually see that game. I don't know how much of it was Maine and how much of it was just Indiana still figuring themselves out.
Fair enough.
But it's a fair point to bring up. So Ohio State will start with Maine. If they win, they'll get the winner between Duke and Richmond there.
I hate spiders.
10 seed Maryland starts with 7 seed Iowa State. This Look, if you're looking for games to watch, this should be one of those because Iowa State has
Mm-hmm.
one of the more talented freshmen in the country in Audie Crooks. Seeing her go against Cheyenne Sellers and the Terps, that will be a fun watch.
Yeah, Maryland getting in with a 10 seed. Where like they were on the bubble before, but then when they thumped Ohio State, that just
You can't get rid of Brenda Freeze that easy. You just can't. I mean, it's just amazing. Even in their worst year and however many, they're still in the dance.
Yeah, and thump and you got to think that maybe they were a first four if they hadn't beaten Ohio State, but
they would have been right on that line.
The fact that they gave them a thumping got them out of the first four and into a bye at a 10 seed. So good on them. I hope that they've got a tall order if they beat Iowa State though, because then you've got Stanford. So it doesn't get easy for the 10 seed if they advance.
So we'll see what happens with them. Elsewhere, Nebraska gets a 6 seed. They're taking on Texas A&M, just like the men are. Nebraska and Texas A&M.
I wonder if that's ever happened before much, to where the men and women play the same team in their tournament.
Well, and of course, this one gets juicier because Trev Alberts, who was a Nebraska AD, just left for Texas A&M.
Correct. Yes.
So this is an interesting sequence, but that is a.
You got to think the committees did it on purpose.
But it's a Friday night game at 10:30 for Nebraska and Texas A&M. And again, Nebraska had an impressive showing in Minneapolis in that Big Ten tournament. Was really a shot away from winning it, knocking off Caitlin Clark and the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, what a final! Oh goodness, what a final! You know, it went to overtime. Nebraska, I think they obviously worked their way into a 6 seed because of their performance in Minneapolis.
Yep.
But that just tells me that it doesn't matter who they're playing. They could probably knock off a couple of teams and get to, maybe that second weekend if they can get it clicking.
Yeah. No, I'm totally with you. And then Indiana, a 4 seed, will be scoring off with 13 seed Fairfield. That's a Saturday game at 1:30. It'd be interesting to see what the Hoosiers, again, Holmes went down at the end of the regular season. Her backup, Lily Meister, went down with an injury at the end of the regular season. So their 2 posts went down with injuries. It's been 2 weeks, though, since then. 2 to 3 weeks, 3 weeks since the end of the regular season.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see if they're healthy and back to 100% heading into the dance.
If they're not, you got to think there's something major wrong if that's the case. I mean, not saying that they're not doing everything they can to get healthy, but if they're still not ready to go after that long of a layoff, oh wow, you got to worry. I'm not gonna say they're gonna make it to the Elite 8 or Final 4, but they should get to the second weekend to depend, on their resume alone. They're a good basketball team. It's a matter of course, they should have made it to the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 in last year too.
Yes.
But they fell short. But that's not kicking dirt on them or anything. That's just it is what it is on that.
Yeah.
But, hopefully they can regain and make a move.
And then we can we'll wrap with the first game of the women's side. 9 seed Michigan State taking on 8 seed North Carolina. This game's in Columbia, South Carolina. It's a 11:30 tip on Friday morning to get you going with what is going to be a crazy day with both the men and women.
So Michigan State kicks off the tournament, both tournaments.
Yes.
Wow. All right. Well,
I know it's a nice little nugget. I don't know what it means.
But Nebraska and A&M play each other,
But that should really be an interesting one. Of course, Michigan State had a tough one in Minneapolis. They fell to Nebraska in the Big Ten tournament quarterfinals. Nebraska, though, as we've talked about, is a bad matchup for Michigan State. The Spartans have 7 players in the rotation mainly, and they're all guards. They're 6'2" or shorter. So you get a really good post player. It makes life pretty tough.
Yeah.
So that should really be a great game between Michigan State and North Carolina. And then, of course, the winner most likely gets undefeated #1 overall, South Carolina. They're at South Carolina, and that would be – look, it sets up for an incredible opportunity.
You want to say the biggest upset in women's college basketball history? That would be it, Riley.
It's got to be in that discussion, I would imagine. I suppose I don't know
I know there have been 1 seeds that have gotten beat by 16 seeds, but still not at the extent of undefeated.
As dominant as they've been, they've only lost 1 game in the last 2 years, and it was in the Final Four. Like,
correct, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So that should be pretty interesting. But for Michigan State, seeing if they can get by North Carolina, this is a game that's going to be interesting because they play differently. Michigan State wants to get out and run. North Carolina, not as much. They want to get it into the half court. It'll be a fight for tempo, and should be a great way to kick off the Friday because you got round of 64 games for the men and women on that Friday. It's going to be a lot of basketball.
Oh, if you are a college basketball fan, you are going delirious right now. Delirious right now. It is great. It is great. This is our Christmas right now.
It really is. This is the best time of the year. So get all the TVs out, get them all ready.
I've shown you what I do. I've got the capability of splitting it into 4. I'll have 4 games going at once.
It's a seasoned vet right there.
Yeah, that's right.
But all right, let's close up another episode of Big Talk. Sam, let everybody know where they can find us.
Well, mind you, again, you are watching this on Thursday and Friday. So if this is on Friday, ignore it. Well, actually, you could tell us how stupid we are or how awesome we are, depending on what we said. But for Thursday games, but if you want to get a hold of us in anywhere or find us, TikToks, the Instagrams, and the platform formerly known as Twitter, it is at B1G_talk. That's B1G Dalton, not BIG. Hold up the one finger. B1G. Yes. _talk. If you go to Facebook, it's B1G Talk. Big Talk. Not all Big Talk. Those are wonderful people, I'm sure, but they're not these people. So Big Talk on Facebook. You can find us normally every Friday morning at 9 a.m. But this one is on Thursday and Friday. So it's an encore if you're watching on Friday. But later that day on Lounge Media or through Lounge Media Group.
All right, very good. Well, that'll do it for the March Madness edition of Big Talk, college sports with Midwest perspective, blue collar and blue blood.
You'll probably see me with bags, just even more bags under my eyes next week because it's just. And next week I should be. No, I'll still be here, but I will be in Detroit for the regional semis and finals next week.
Ooh, might have some on-site reporting.
Maybe.
But everybody enjoy it. We said it's our Christmas. Enjoy this week. Enjoy the weekend. March Madness. And for my partner, Sam Sprunger, myself, Dalton Shetler, so long, everyone.
Ho, ho, ho.